I found this in my drafts folder 3 weeks ago. I don't remember writing it. I don't remember deciding not to send it. But the timestamp says 4:47 a.m., October 9th, and I know I was awake then because I haven't really slept since the Ridley case closed. I'm Patricia Wolf. I've been county coroner for 11 years, ER physician for 14 before that. I've pronounced over 800 people dead. I know what death looks like, smells like, feels like under gloved fingers. I know the specific weight of a body bag, the sound of a zipper closing over a face for the last time, the way air leaves lungs that will never fill again. I thought I knew where the line was. I was wrong. It started September 23rd, a Tuesday routine exhumation request. James Ridley, 47, interred 6 weeks prior following sudden cardiac arrest at home. His life insurance company was contesting the payout. They wanted independent verification that the death was natural, not suicide masked as heart failure. Standard corporate cruelty, standard procedure for us. We scheduled the disinterment for early morning, set up the examination tent in the far corner of Mount Olivet Cemetery, where the equipment noise wouldn't disturb visitors. The backhoe operator arrived at 6:15 a.m. Tyler Brennan, my forensic tech, pulled up 10 minutes later with the documentation kit and monitoring equipment. The casket came up at 7:03 a.m. I logged the time, noted the seal was intact, no water damage to the vault. We transferred it to the tent, and I remember Tyler making some comment about the weight distribution feeling normal. Nothing shifted inside. Professional observation. We're trained to notice things like that. The temperature inside the tent was 61 degrees, overcast sky, humidity at 73%. I recorded everything. I always do. I opened the casket at 7:31 a.m. James Ridley looked exactly as he should have. 6 weeks of decomposition in a sealed environment. Climate-controlled cemetery. Standard embalming. Skin had that waxy, sunken quality. Slight discoloration around the jaw and neck. Hands folded over his chest, showing early tissue breakdown at the fingertips. Nothing unusual. Nothing wrong. I began my external examination, Tyler setting up the camera angles we'd need for the insurance documentation. That's when I noticed the glass panel. The casket had one of those small viewing windows near the head, decorative brass frame, maybe 6 inches across. And there was condensation on it. Just a small patch, clouding the glass from the inside, right above James's face. Even as I stared at it, the moisture faded, cleared completely. I waited. Counted to 4. The glass misted again, same spot, same diffusion pattern. Faded, misted, faded. Tyler, I said, and my voice sounded strange even to me, too careful, too controlled. Are you seeing this? He leaned in, watched for maybe 30 seconds. His face went very still. That's not possible, he said, but he was already reaching for the thermal camera. The condensation appeared and disappeared every 4 seconds. I timed it with my watch. 16 times per minute, the exact rate of human respiration at rest. I've seen decomposition gases create pressure changes. I've seen temperature differentials cause moisture patterns. This was neither. The misting originated from a specific point, spread outward in a circular pattern, then evaporated from the edges inward, like breath on cold glass. Like someone exhaling against a window, trying to be seen. Tyler got the thermal imaging, running at 8:15 a.m. The temperature inside the casket registered consistent with ambient. No heat sources, no biological activity, but the condensation continued. We documented 47 cycles before I called Diane Ridley. She arrived at 10:20 a.m., and I've never had to have a conversation like that before. How do you tell a widow that her husband's body might be doing something that dead tissue cannot do? I showed her the footage. She watched the glass mist and clear, and I saw something in her face that wasn't quite surprise. More like confirmation of something she'd been afraid to think too loudly. He was volunteering for consciousness studies, she said finally. Dr. Grant Yoshida's lab, over at the university. Some research about awareness during clinical death, trying to prove consciousness could persist in dying neural tissue. James was obsessed with it, thought he was going to help prove the afterlife exists or something. She pressed her fingers against her temples. He went in for sessions twice a week for a month before he died. Came home talking about anchoring, about staying aware even when the body stops. I thought it was just talk. Research subject enthusiasm. I contacted Dr. Yoshida at 11:47 a.m. He arrived at the cemetery at 1:33 p.m., looking like he hadn't slept well in a while. When I showed him the condensation pattern, his hands started shaking. He tried to hide it, but I've seen enough trauma response to recognize it. The technique was theoretical, he said, staring at the casket. Targeted electromagnetic stimulation during controlled cardiac events, attempting to maintain synaptic coherence through clinical death. We resuscitated every subject within 90 seconds. James's last session was 4 days before he died at home. He looked at me. This shouldn't be possible. When the brain dies, it dies. There's no mechanism for what? I asked. He didn't answer. I set up continuous monitoring that night. 3 cameras, thermal imaging, audio recording, air quality sensors. Tyler refused to stay with me. He didn't say it outright, but I saw him glance at the casket before he left, saw the way he walked faster than necessary toward his car. I stayed alone in the tent with James Ridley's body, watching the condensation appear and fade on a loop, 16 breaths per minute, impossibly regular. At 3:33 a.m., it stopped. The silence was worse than the pattern had been. I watched the glass stay clear for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20. Nothing. I checked all the equipment, everything still recording, no malfunctions. The breathing pattern had simply ceased. When I reviewed the footage later, I counted 6,208 cycles of condensation between 7:31 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. the next day. 18 hours of something that could not be happening. I performed the brain tissue sampling at 6 a.m., brought in Angela Reeves, bioethicist, old colleague from my ER days, by 9 a.m. She watched me examine the slides under the microscope, and I watched her face change when she saw what I was seeing. Neural tissue doesn't fire after death. The electrochemical processes that allow synapses to function require living cells, oxygen, energy. But James Ridley's neurons were showing activity, not random electrical noise, not decomposition artifacts, organized patterns, sequential activation across preserved neural pathways. Can you decode it? Angela asked. I'd already started. It took me 4 hours because I kept hoping I was wrong. But the patterns were too precise, too deliberate. Morse code spelled out in the firing sequences of dead synapses. Trapped, help, wake. We brought in a neurologist, a physicist, 2 more bioethicists. Documented everything. The insurance company withdrew their contest. This was so far beyond their scope, they wanted nothing to do with it. Dr. Yoshida surrendered his research notes, shut down his lab. None of it helped us answer the only question that mattered. The funeral home wanted the body released. The family had purchased a cremation slot. Standard procedure. Close the case. Release the remains. Complete the disposition. I've signed off on 10,000 death certificates. This should have been routine. But if some fragment of consciousness remains trapped in dying tissue, if James Ridley is in there somewhere experiencing whatever this is, can I ethically burn him? Can I condemn him to feel that? And if I don't, if I keep him in refrigeration in this twilight state, am I preserving a person or prolonging a horror beyond comprehension? I filed the case as pending additional investigation 3 weeks ago. James Ridley remains in cold storage, Vault 7, Drawer 12. I've checked on him 4 times. No more condensation. No more neural patterns we can detect with our equipment. But I remember what Tyler said the last time he looked at the body before refusing to be in the room alone with it. His expression changed. I know it didn't. I know the muscles don't work that way, but I swear it changed. I visit the cold storage every few nights now. I tell myself I'm checking documentation, reviewing chain of custody, but really I'm standing there looking at drawer 12, wondering if someone is inside it, aware in some way I can't measure or imagine, experiencing a darkness I can't comprehend, waiting for something I can't give them. Angela keeps asking me to make a decision. Diane Ridley deserves closure. The law has definitions of death I'm required to follow, but those definitions were written by people who never saw what I saw, never had to wonder if the silence is absence or just something we can't hear anymore. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe consciousness survives the physical destruction of the brain. But I know what breathing looks like, and I know what I documented. And now every time I pronounce someone dead, every time I sign a death certificate or release a body for cremation, I feel this cold thread of doubt I never felt before. What if they're still in there? What if they're all still in there, and we just don't have the instruments to hear them? It's 4:47 a.m. Now, James Ridley has been in drawer 12 for 23 days. I need to decide. I need to sleep. I need someone to tell me what death actually means. But I don't think anyone knows anymore.
Hello, YouTube family. Thanks for watching. Big love to our subscribers. You keep this channel alive. Only about 20% of viewers are subscribed, so if you enjoy the chills, hit that subscribe button. It's quick, it helps a ton, and it means more stories coming your way. See you in the next one, if you dare.
I keep a photograph in my desk drawer that I can't explain to anyone. Not to my wife, not to the State Forensics Board, not to Dr. Kirk, who keeps asking me if I've noticed any changes at home. It's a Polaroid I took 3 weeks ago, October 4th, of my daughter Sophie standing in our kitchen making breakfast. In the photo, her skin has a faint greenish tint, like old pennies left in the rain. But when I took the picture, she looked completely normal. The camera saw something my eyes couldn't or wouldn't. I'm Russell Hayes, County Coroner for Millbrook, population 4,200. Same families going back 6 generations. I've held this position for 9 years. Worked as a forensic pathologist for 12 before that. I'm good at what I do. Reading the dead, translating their silent testimony into documentation the living can understand. I also have what my wife calls an obsessive hobby, historical forensics, tracing the genealogy of unidentified remains, giving names back to the anonymous dead. I used to think it was noble work. Now I know some things stay buried for a reason. The call came in on September 12th, a Thursday afternoon, bright sun, and that particular September light that makes everything look clean and possible. The cemetery expansion project had hit something, not bedrock, not a water main, but a grave. No headstone, no records, nothing on the 1920 survey map that should have showed every plot. The backhoe operator, a guy named Dennis, with 30 years experience, refused to keep digging once he saw what was coming up. He called the diocese. They called the county called me. I arrived at Santa Fe Cemetery at 3:47 p.m. with my field kit and documentation equipment. The excavation site was in the northeast corner, section that was supposed to be empty ground, never consecrated, never used. But there was definitely a casket down there, about 4 feet below current grade, much shallower than standard depth. The wood was almost completely deteriorated, collapsed inward, but I could see metal hardware, copper nails, copper hinges, copper corner braces, unusual for the time period. Copper was expensive, usually reserved for wealthier burials. What was inside stopped me cold. A child's skeleton, small, maybe 8 years old, based on dental development and long bone length. But every single bone was wrong. They weren't white or brown or gray like normal skeletal remains. They were copper. Not coated with copper, not stained by groundwater running through copper pipes. The bones themselves had this deep metallic sheen, reddish brown and green, where oxidation had set in. I've seen metal poisoning in bones, seen arsenic preservation, seen bodies buried in lead-lined coffins. This was different. This looked like the copper had grown from inside the skeleton, like the child's bones had transformed into metal while she was still alive. I called Barbara Yates before I even finished the extraction. She's our town historian, 70-something, sharp as surgical steel, knows every family tree and scandal going back to the founding. If anyone had records of this burial, it would be Barbara. She arrived at 5:15 p.m., took one look at the skeleton in the body bag, and her face went absolutely white. "Where exactly did you find this?" she asked, her voice careful, too careful. I showed her the location. She pulled out her phone, checked something, checked it again. "This is the northern boundary of the original town plot, 1870 survey. So nothing should be buried here. This was common land, used for gatherings. They wouldn't have." She stopped, stared at the copper bones visible through the bag's clear panel. "I need to check the archives. Don't release this to anyone. Don't file a report yet." She left before I could ask why. I transported the remains to the morgue at 6:30 p.m., slogged everything, started my examination at 7:15 p.m. under the full spectrum lights. The copper wasn't a coating or corrosion product. It was integrated into the bone matrix, visible in cross-section when I took samples. The bone structure itself had been replaced by metal while somehow maintaining its organic architecture. Medically impossible. Metallurgically impossible. But there it was under my microscope. Copper and calcium phosphate, woven together in patterns that shouldn't exist. Barbara called me at 11:47 p.m. that night. I was still in the lab. "I found something," she said. Millbrook Gazette, August 1897. There was a traveling show that came through town. Stayed for 3 weeks. Featured a copper-skinned child they claimed had prophetic abilities. A girl, about 8 years old, skin described as having a metallic sheen, spoke in tongues, predicted deaths and fortunes. The showman's name was Pruitt, Henry Pruitt. The show vanished on September 9th. Pruitt was found dead on September 11th, throat cut, in the room he'd been renting, above the old general store. The child was never found. "You think this is her? I think you need to run DNA and compare it to the founding family registries. And Russell, be careful what you find." I spent the next 4 days on analysis. The copper contained trace amounts of human blood, preserved far beyond what should be possible. Multiple donors. I extracted enough DNA for comparison and ran it against every genealogical database I could access, including the county historical records Barbara had digitized. 7 matches. 7 different bloodlines, all traced back to founding families. Yates, Morrison, Huang, Blackwell, Novak, Hayes, and Pruitt. My family. My blood was in that copper. I confronted Barbara on September 18th in her archive room, surrounded by leather-bound ledgers and documents in protective sleeves. She looked at me for a long moment, then pulled out a journal I'd never seen before, handwritten, dated 1897. "The town was dying," she said quietly. "Crops failing, businesses closing, people leaving. The founding families were desperate. When Pruitt's show came through with the copper child, they saw an opportunity. She wasn't prophetic. She was something else, something that could be used. They killed Pruitt, took the girl and 7 family heads, performed a ritual, recorded in this journal. They mixed their blood with molten copper, poured it down her throat while she was still alive, and buried her at the boundary point. A sacrifice to bind prosperity to the town, to their bloodlines. And it worked. Millbrook thrived for 127 years, until you dug her up. I wanted to call it superstitious nonsense, but I'd seen the copper bones, seen the DNA results, and I was starting to notice things in town. Thompson's Hardware, open since 1903, closed overnight on September 14th. The Morrison farm lost an entire crop to sudden blight on September 16th. The Blackwell family's investment firm collapsed on September 19th. And Sophie started acting strange on September 20th. Small things at first. She'd use words she shouldn't know, the and thou, wherefore and hither. She complained of tingling in her hands. When Dr. Allison Kirk examined her on September 23rd, Sophie's blood work came back wrong. Elevated copper levels, far beyond toxic but somehow not causing symptoms. And a faint metallic sheen to her skin that appeared and disappeared depending on the light. "This isn't medically possible," Allison told me on September 25th, showing me Sophie's labs. "Her copper levels should have killed her 3 times over. But she's not sick. She's changing." Sophie started speaking in complete sentences she couldn't understand. Languages I had to research to identify Middle English, Old Dutch, phrases from dead dialects. She told me things she couldn't know. Where Barbara kept her husband's gun after he died in 1983. What the Morrison farm looked like before the big fire in 1952. The exact location of the old Pruitt boarding house. Yesterday, October 24th, a man named Jackson Pruitt showed up at my office. Mid-50s, thin, eyes that had seen too much anger for too long. Great-great-grandson of Henry Pruitt, the murdered showman. "You opened the grave," he said. "It wasn't a question." "How did you?" "I've been waiting my whole life for someone to open it. They killed my ancestor and stole his meal ticket, his fortune, used her for their own prosperity. I want the founding families to pay what they owe." He smiled, and it was a terrible smile. "And it's already starting, isn't it? The protection's broken. Everything they built on her bones is going to crumble." He left before I could respond. Sophie is sleeping now, 2:34 a.m., October 26. I'm watching her from the doorway. In the dim light from the hallway, her skin has that greenish copper patina. Her breathing sounds wrong, metallic, like air moving through pipes. This afternoon, she drew a picture of herself in a wooden box underground, and she titled it, "Where I Used to Live." Dr. Kirk has no treatment protocol for impossible blood chemistry. Barbara won't return my calls. The businesses keep failing, old family names going bankrupt overnight, and I keep thinking about what the journal said. The copper child was still alive when they poured the metal down her throat, still aware when they buried her, trapped in those bones for 127 years, holding the town's bargain, keeping the blood debt sealed. Now she's free. And my daughter is the closest living descendant, the youngest carrier of that founding blood, the most vulnerable conduit. I've thought about reburying the copper bones, trying to reseal whatever was opened. But would that stop what's already begun? Would it save Sophie? Or would it trap her in that twilight place where the copper child has been waiting for over a century? I used to believe the past held answers for the present. I used to think giving names back to the anonymous dead was noble work. But some debts can't be researched away. Some bones carry grudges that outlive flesh by generations. And some protections cost more than anyone should pay, especially when the bill comes due in your daughter's blood. Sophie just called out in her sleep. Not in English. In a language I don't recognize. In a voice that doesn't sound entirely like hers anymore. And when I stepped into her room, just for a second, I swear I saw two shadows on the wall. And something smaller, older, reaching up from beneath her bed, like it's trying to pull itself into the light after 127 years of darkness. I don't know how to save her. I don't know if she can be saved. I only know I disturbed something that was supposed to stay buried. And now it's wearing my daughter's face while it remembers what it means to be alive. The copper bones are still in the morgue, Vault 3, Drawer 18. They're evidence in an investigation I can't officially close. But sometimes at night, I swear I can hear them singing through the building's pipes. Copper calling to copper. And I wonder which skeleton I should be more afraid of, the one in my morgue, or the one my daughter is slowly becoming. I'm writing this at 3:17 a.m. in a motel 6 counties away from home, because I can't go back there. Can't go near water. Can't even run the shower without hearing it. That sound beneath the spray, like something breathing in rhythm with the tide. My name is Michelle Drake. I was county coroner for Baylor County until 4 days ago when I stopped showing up to work. They're probably looking for me by now. Let them look. I need to write this down while I still remember which memories are mine and which ones came from the water. I have a master's degree in marine biology from UC San Diego. Spent 3 years studying deep-sea ecosystems, organisms that live in pressure and darkness. Humans were never meant to witness. I switched to forensic pathology because I thought the dead would be simpler than the ocean. Turns out some things don't respect the boundary between sea and land, between drowning and breathing, between then and now. The Payne exhumation request came through on October 2nd. Routine insurance dispute. Arthur Payne, 56, died 8 months prior from drowning. His daughter Laura was contesting the accidental death ruling, claiming it was medical negligence because Arthur had been alone in his bathtub with a documented heart condition. Standard case for review. What made me pause was the location. Baylor County is landlocked, high desert terrain, no natural bodies of water deeper than 4 feet. The official report said bathtub drowning. Simple. Tragic. Unremarkable. I scheduled the exhumation for October 9th, early morning, temperature already hitting 83 degrees by 7 a.m. The casket came up from Desert View Cemetery at 7:34 a.m. And I noticed the weight immediately. Too heavy. Significantly heavier than it should have been for a casket and remains after 8 months. My assistant that day, a guy named Tim, commented on it too. The burial vault showed no signs of water intrusion, no erosion, no mud, perfectly dry. We transported it to the examination facility, and I started the opening procedure at 9:15 a.m. in the sealed examination room, just me and the documentation equipment. The casket was hermetically sealed, rubber gasket intact, no breaches in the seal. I broke the seal at 9:22 a.m. Water poured out, gallons of it, cascading over the sides, flooding the tile floor around my boots. Not clean water. Brackish, thick, reeking of salt, and something deeper. That particular smell of ocean decay, dead things in tidal zones, marine vegetation rotting in the sun. The stench was overwhelming, nothing like the chemical odor of embalming fluid or the sweet rot of decomposition I'm trained to recognize. This was ocean. This was salt water. in a hermetically sealed casket, buried 8 months in desert soil 200 miles from the nearest coastline. I stood there watching it drain, maybe 30 gallons, maybe more, the water dark and cloudy, bits of organic matter suspended in it. My marine biology background kicked in before my coroner training did. I collected samples, hands shaking, already knowing this was impossible. Arthur Payne's body was waterlogged, skin pruned and macerated like he'd been submerged for days, not lying in a sealed casket in arid conditions. There was growth in his hair, not mold, not bacterial colonies, barnacles. Tiny juvenile barnacles, the kind that attach to submerged surfaces in saltwater environments. His fingernails had the distinct wear pattern of someone clawing at something underwater, and when I performed the lung examination, they were full, completely saturated with seawater. I sent samples to the State Marine Lab that day, called in a favor from my former advisor at San Diego. Results came back on October 12th. The water contained phytoplankton species, specifically Phytocystis and Cossinodiscus, found exclusively in deep Pacific waters below 2,000 meters. The barnacles were Bethylasma coralliforme, a species that lives on deep-sea thermal vents. The water chemistry matched Pacific Ocean composition at abyssal depths. Arthur Payne's lungs contain water from an environment that exists thousands of miles away and miles below the surface. Laura Payne came to my office on October 13th. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks, eyes red-rimmed, constantly touching her wet hair even though it was dry. He kept having nightmares, she told me, voice flat with exhaustion. For maybe 6 weeks before he died, said he was drowning at sea, could feel the water filling his lungs, the pressure crushing him. He'd wake up soaked, sheets drenched, tasting salt. Dr. Albright diagnosed anxiety-induced night sweats, prescribed sleep medication. But Dad said the dreams were getting more real, more detailed. He could describe the ship going down, the darkness of the water, the cold. He'd never been in the Navy, never even been on a cruise ship. Did anything trigger the nightmares? Any changes in his life? She looked at me for a long moment. He inherited his grandfather's effects. Samuel Payne, naval officer, lost at sea in 1943 when his destroyer went down in the Pacific. Body never recovered. Some marine salvage company found the wreck last year, sent Dad the personal items they recovered. A compass, mostly brass, completely covered in barnacles and coral growth. Dad cleaned it up, kept it on his desk. The nightmares started 3 days later. I visited Laura's house on October 15th. She'd called me at 2 a.m., voice tight with panic. "There's water," she said. "It's everywhere." Her bathroom faucets were leaking seawater, not rusty pipe water, not discolored well water, salt water, leaving white residue around the drains, the whole house smelling like low tide. Her basement had an inch of standing water that tasted of brine when I tested it. No broken pipes, no flooding from external sources. The water was just appearing. The compass was still there, on her father's old desk, brass, heavily pitted by years of saltwater corrosion, but functional. The needle didn't point north, it pointed northwest, steady and unwavering, towards something I couldn't name. I met with Captain William Moss on October 17th, retired naval historian, who'd helped research the shipwreck that recovered Samuel Payne's effects. He met me at a diner in town, wouldn't come to my office. "Maritime curses aren't officially recognized," he said, stirring coffee. He wasn't drinking. "But every sailor knows them. Ships that go down with men still trapped inside. They hold on, not ghosts. Something worse. The ocean doesn't let go of what it claims. When you bring artifacts up from ships where men died screaming for air, sometimes you bring other things too." "Like what?" "Like debts. Like hunger. The Payne destroyer went down with 62 men. They found the wreck at 3,400 meters. No survivors, no rescue, just men drowning in darkness, pressure crushing them, seawater forcing its way into their lungs. That kind of death leaves an impression. And bloodlines matter. If your grandfather drowned in the Pacific and his effects come back, maybe part of him comes back too, maybe part of all of them." I contacted Noah Jensen, the marine salvage expert, whose company recovered the artifacts. He answered the phone on the 8th ring. Sounded half asleep at 2 p.m. "I don't go near water anymore," he said. "Haven't since we brought up that wreck. I dream about it every night. I'm on the ship when it goes down, feel the hull breach, the water rushing in, Except I'm not me. I'm Samuel Payne, and I know I'm going to drown, and I know my family will never find me. Then I wake up and my bed is soaking wet, and I taste salt for hours. How many artifacts did you recover? 43 items from different crew members. We sent them to next of kin when we could track them down. 26 families. He paused. I've been getting calls. 7 of them have reported water problems. 3 descendants have died, 2 drownings in bathtubs, 1 in a basement that flooded from nowhere. I hung up and stared at the compass on my desk. I'd taken it from Laura's house, told myself it was evidence, but really, I needed to see where it pointed, needed to follow it. On October 19th, at 6:30 a.m., I drove northwest following the compass direction. It led me 40 minutes out of town to Miller Lake, a shallow recreational reservoir maybe 6 feet at its deepest point. Except when I got there, the lake looked wrong. Darker. The water had a quality I recognized from my research days, that particular opacity of deep ocean water, heavy with pressure and cold. The smell hit me before I got out of the car. Salt, brine, the Pacific. I walked to the shore and the compass needle swung straight down, pointing into the water, and I swear I could see it, depths that shouldn't exist. Darkness that went down and down and down. Something moved in that darkness. Something vast and patient that had been waiting since 1943 for the bloodline it claimed to come home. Dr. Albright called me on October 21st. His office had flooded overnight. 6 inches of seawater in a second-floor suite, with no plumbing issues, no roof leaks. He'd found barnacles growing on his desk chairs. He'd stopped being skeptical. Laura Payne died on October 22nd. They found her in her bathtub, lungs full of salt water, skin waterlogged, like she'd been submerged for days. The bathroom was dry, the tub was dry, but she drowned anyway. I started having the dreams on October 23rd. I'm on the destroyer when it goes down. Feel the cold Pacific crushing in. Know I'm going to die screaming for air that will never come. Except, I'm not just Samuel Payne. I'm all 62 men, drowning together in the dark, and I've been drowning for 82 years. And now I'm awake. Now I'm home. Now I need to finish what the ocean started. I woke up this morning in a motel bathtub full of seawater. I don't remember filling it. Don't remember getting in. The compass is still pointing, but now it's pointing at me. I can taste salt every time I swallow. My skin prunes and never smooths out. When I close my eyes, I see that destroyer's hull breaching. Feel the water pressure equalizing. Hear 62 men screaming in the dark. If you inherited anything from someone who drowned, burn it, don't clean it, don't keep it, don't try to honor their memory. Some deaths don't end. Some water doesn't let go. And some debts get paid in bloodlines, generation after generation, until the ocean claims what it thinks it's owed. I'm not going back to Baylor County. I'm not going near Miller Lake or any body of water deeper than a puddle, but it doesn't matter. The dreams are getting longer. The salt taste is getting stronger. And this morning when I looked in the bathroom mirror, just for a second, I saw someone else staring back. Someone in a naval uniform, someone drowning, someone reaching through the glass like water through a breach in the hull. The compass is still pointing at me, and I think I finally understand what it's been pointing toward all along. Not north, not home. Down, always down. Into the dark where the ocean keeps what it claims and never stops calling it back.